Welcome to a brand new podcast. Ian McLean is a writer and the author of TJ's War. David Blair is an actor and the narrator of the audiobook TJ's War. David and Iain have been listening to their readers and listeners and have decided to turn TJ's War into a movie. And since the story covers the entirety of World War II, the movie will cost at least $50 million. Will David and Iain succeed in their quest? Follow them in this podcast series. We're going to make a $50 million movie.
Welcome back, folks. One person, isn't it? Well, on the radio, it's one person, dear listener.
On the radio?
Yeah, on audio, the idea is that you're talking to one person.
Yeah, I think, back in the day, it's called a wireless because it wasn't connected. It was just coming through the airwaves, and that became called a radio. Now, there's no radio. This is all by the internet. So
audio is the podcast, the listening format.
Yes.
I find a lot more intimate than a viewed format.
I think that's true. I think that's the audiobook. I can absolutely, any audiobook I can get into. I enjoy it more than the film, I think.
Even though it's part of my trade, part of my industry, I think that's why I find commercials, advertising on radio more intrusive than on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're in a more intimate space to start with, and then somebody starts saying, I always use this pet food. Oh.
Yeah, you've got fewer clues to get back into where you were.
Yes.
So yeah, the advertising really does screw it up.
Although it's a very important part of the process.
Oh, it's such a strange world that we live in.
It is.
I mean, can you imagine? There they were living in caves 2 million years ago, and they thought one day they will do no work at all. We'll stay in their houses 24 hours a day, and we'll survive on podcasts and advertising. And much better than going out hunting animals and taking fruit from trees.
Yeah, someone else will cook all your food
and deliver it
on
mopeds with learner plates on the back.
Yeah, there'll be a cloud in the sky that will have all knowledge in it.
That's right.
But all you will do is, on a tiny little screen, watch videos of cats. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, so where are we at? What have we done? We've done some time on the thing that we both feel is pretty much the main success so far, and that's to have assembled an amazing team of people.
Yeah, if you remember, I mentioned complexity theory weeks ago in one of these episodes. There are phases in complexity theory. There's chaos, and there's emergence. From the chaos, there's emergence of some kind of pattern, and then there's ordering, and then there's optimization, and then falls back into chaos as you over-optimize. So I said, let's be comfortable with the chaos. But I don't think we've got chaos anymore. I think already we've started getting emergence coming out of this, of the steps in the path. Not all of the steps. I think there's still quite a few steps in a cloud, different type of cloud from the internet, but in a cloud. But the next steps, I think, are pretty clear. I think that's what you were about to talk about now. Just what are our next steps?
Cheers.
Hospital pass. I can answer it if I have to.
I've got 6 massive forwards running towards me, who just diverted from you.
Well, I can tell you.
No. I have an idea. Let me go first, and then you can tidy up. I think money is one of our main foci.
Not the 50 million though.
No, not absolutely not 50 million. But just suddenly a window opened in the last few days for you and I about resources for, be they people or websites, where we can get a little more concrete information on the steps that we need to take, and seed funding, whether we go down a more, business route of crowdfunding perhaps, or whether we seek help from a body, be it government or private, to help with funding. For instance, the Scottish, I forget what they are, Scottish arts.
Yeah, but it's
They have a fund anyway that they
Creative Scotland, I think it's called.
That's it, yeah. And if you show that your project will have something to do with Scotland and show it in a reasonable light, they might be amenable to throwing a chunk of change your way. But the main thing we need for now is money for, although we have a script, it's not in a workable state at the moment, and we need to hire a scriptwriter, a proper professional, trained screenwriter, and not just any screenwriter, one with suitable credits under their belt that knows, you know, they might say, well, this is great, but you have to have this within the first 10 pages. Or if you want it under that budget, you will have to cut that scene, and so on. They will be familiar with the mechanics of filmmaking and production enough that they will be able to not just write it artistically in a good way, but in a mechanical way to understand what's needed. So that's one of the next things on our to-do list.
I think I want to slightly change the emphasis on some of that stuff. First of all, I think the script that we've produced so far, we don't know whether it's workable or not. That's not the issue. It was produced by us, so it probably isn't, because we've not done script writing before. But the real point about the script writer is this person will cost us money because they've done it before and are recognized within the industry. Once we get the right script writer on board, other people will follow, because they'll go, okay, I can trust if this guy's involved that the script will be adequate.
Yes, for me, they go hand in hand.
Yes, but that's something that we can't. We've written the script, you and I. Nobody knows anything about us, so they're not going to know whether it's a good script or not. The really important thing about the script writer is, and why the person is going to cost us money, is that they've done this before and they're recognized within the industry. Not just done it once or twice, but have clearly done it several times and have probably been recognized in some way for their ability. Getting that person on board will be the start of getting other people that we need on board. And each time we get that step, the scriptwriter will cost us money, so that's what we need to raise funds for straight away. But getting that person on board will mean that other people that we would want will come on board, and they will cost us money, which we will then need to keep raising to achieve. But we will gain momentum in that way.
Yeah, I think that is what I was saying. But you were also highlighting the fact that if we were to have inadvertently written a script as well as they could, it wouldn't be much use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the point.
But they wouldn't have that. I mean, I'm sure, you know, there'll be writers that we might find that may have the credentials and may have these credits under their belt, but they might not be much good for us. They might not have the right style or whatever it happens to be.
Almost goes against the grain to do things this way, because to me it's almost nepotistic in its form. The only way that things are going to get made is by people who've done this before. So how do new people get in if that's always the case?
Yeah.
And staying with funding, it's very clear from agencies that we've looked at, especially in the UK, the government subsidies, that for any agency to treat our application with respect, it needs to have been submitted by a producer who has produced film or TV series previously. Again, you wonder, well, how do new people get into the business? So, and maybe that's right. Maybe you don't want taxpayers' money, which is what it is at the end of the day, being splashed out on people who've got no idea what they're doing. But it does keep it very closed and very tight. And I think
swings and roundabouts. I think there are benefits of that and disadvantages.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but then it would be so open to abuse if there wasn't you know, some sort of prerequisite for. It's like the training I had was excellent, and I as an actor many moons ago, and it was, you know, it's one of the top 4 or 5 drama schools, and I believe still is. And it doesn't mean I'm necessarily a better actor than anyone else, but still to this day, it is working in my favor that I have that on my CV. to sort of a parallel example,
No, there's lots of them. There's the Russell Group of universities, and
Yeah.
if you've gone to one of those, then and it's on, if it's not, it should be on your CV, because people looking at it will immediately give you a higher credit than someone whose university wasn't part of the Russell Group.
And Oxbridge possibly above those.
Yeah.
Irrespective of the actual educational training that you had.
Or you, irrespective of your own ability. They'll look at that later, but certainly, Churchill said that democracy was the worst form of government until you looked at all the others.
Contentious viewpoint coming up.
Ooh.
In principle, I think that an unelected second house isn't necessarily unfair. The way it's been populated, certainly in the last 400 or 500 years, say, has been nepotistic and undemocratic. And, why should a bishop have right to determine the laws that govern me any more than anyone else, simply because they're part of the establishment? I believe, of course, they shouldn't. However, if a second house were populated with a more, say, jury service style selection system from all walks of British life, race, age, gender, etc., as long as there were some low level bar above which people would need to be, they have no vested interest. And that, strangely, might actually be a good thing, because the people in the Commons, those we elect, backbenchers, some of whom are wonderful, very hard-working people, and some of the front benchers too. But it is open, as we see day in, day out, to tremendous abuse, and people who are there simply because they like having the keys, they like having the power. Boris Johnson being one. And having a second house with people who haven't ended up there because they have bought somebody a speedboat or been the head of this church or that church could be a good thing.
This from a man who about 30 minutes ago said, let's not bring politics into this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could always edit this bit out.
Sure, that I don't think I like this kind of stuff. I agree with what you're saying. I think it's always good to have checks and balances, and I can actually bring this back to the book too. But before I do, I want to get onto my soapbox about politicians who've got no experience of life except being politicians. I think people should be barred from becoming politicians straight from university, and I think that we need politicians who've done something in life. It doesn't matter what, but they must come into politics having worked in or been in some sphere other than politics for a significant period first. We have a complete vacuum of knowledge amongst most of our senior politicians. Boris Johnson has been a journalist and a politician for most of his life, and very engaging as he is as a speaker, he has proved beyond doubt that he knows very little about most things.
That does sometimes appear to be the case, but
yes, checks and balances in the military. When I was an RAF officer, I joined as a 17-year-old commissioned officer. You go through Cranwell and you get a commission, and I was a pilot officer initially, and there were men who'd been in the RAF for 25, even 30 years. Some who, this was 1977, so 30 years earlier would have been 1947. Just missed the Second World War, but would have been in the Korean War and so on. Who called me sir and saluted me as I walked past, and I would have to salute them back. And I was by the time I was commissioned, I was 18. But you think, well, what on earth's going on with that? But the reality is that I was at the lowest rank of commissioned officers, and you went from pilot officer, flying officer, flight lieutenant on up through the air ranks, air commodore, air marshal, air vice marshal, and so on. That was one stream. But if you joined as a 17-year-old non-commissioned officer, you become an aircraftsman, and you got through the ranks into corporal, into sergeant, into flight sergeant, into warrant officer. And a warrant officer would typically have around about 20 to 25 years service. I'm talking back in the day. I don't know quite what it is these days. But nobody in their right mind who was a commissioned officer, even an air vice marshal, would go against, especially publicly, would go against what the warrant officer was saying. The two streams of ranks had tremendous respect for each other and kept each other in check.
Mm.
It ensured that people didn't go off the rails.
Mm.
And this idea of having corrupt politicians, I don't actually think there are as many corrupt politicians as people make out. I think the media has got a lot to answer for in that respect. But if you have, as you're talking about, the unelected house and the elected house, in theory at least, if it's done right, they should discipline each other in the same way. And I know from my time in the RAF that definitely works. Mm. And I'm sure it's the same in the Army and the Navy.
We've seen this with the Rwanda thing recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was backwards and forwards until compromise.
And one of the areas where we don't have that is the police. You join as a constable, you get all the way up to chief constable. It's the same line. Mm. And you know, I think by the time you've got to chief inspector, there are a lot of skeletons in your cupboard that other people know about. So you find that you can't break away. You can't. Mm. Instead of discipline, it's the opposite of discipline. So anyway, there we are, bringing us back to what we were talking about. What were you going on about, David?
I was talking about having that thing on my CV, having the place where I went, and like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm any better or worse than any other actor that doesn't have that on their CV, but it does open doors. It's something that you have in your pocket forevermore, assuming that place is seen as a good thing, which luckily it still is.
Where is it? Where is Guildhall?
It's in the city. It's part of the city of London. So it used to be in the Barbican. It's just over the road now in a modern building.
So you're a student going there.
Yeah.
I mean, how do students survive in the city of London? It's one of the most expensive places in the world.
Oh, well, I think it was the Guildhall itself owned some rental property. So in the first year, I lived above Spitalfields Market. And this was back in the day, before it was all trendy and expensive. It was pretty much still a kind of spit and sawdust market. It didn't trade much, and I think they'd kind of moved out, gone to other places. But I lived in a flat on Commercial Street, opposite the 10 Bells pub, which we went to once or twice, but we decided not to go there again. So I roomed with somebody on the technical theatre course, a guy called Mike, couple of musicians, and I think that might have been it. There were 4 or 5 of us. And then once, and I was obviously on the acting course, and then second and third year, shared flats with other people that I got to know on the acting course. But in those days, this is 92 to 95. I don't think that London, obviously it was more expensive than, I don't know, a bunch of other cities, but it wasn't, I don't think it was quite as crazy as it is now.
Yeah.
And we lived very frugally, obviously. And do you know what I think we should do, Ian?
Tell me, David.
I think we should put a flag in the future. I think we should have a countdown and work up to it and say, in how many years do you think? 10? Should we go 10?
Yeah,
but
okay.
This thing will be out. It will be made and it will be out.
I think it'll be a lot less than 10. It better be a lot less than 10. I'm not sure I'll be here in 10 years.
Bollocks, of course you will.
You know, I've had a good life. I don't deserve to be here in 10 years' time.
Okay, 5?
Yeah, let's go for 5.
8, 6, 15.
Let's go for 5. I can't see any reason why it should be any longer than 5. Based on hope. You know, if it's in 5 years' time, I won't quite be 70 years old. And,
I think having a date destination just tweaks things a little bit. I think it's all up there in the ether at the moment, and without getting too mumbo jumbo woo woo about it, we're here to sort of manifest things, make things real, whether
if you put it out into the universe,
or business or
absolutely.
anything. Yeah. So us saying we're already starting to make tangible, very early days of making tangible this thing. If we put a date on it, feels a bit more we've got to do it by then.
Yeah, no, it's true. I always tell people when I'm coaching them in careers, whatever rank or position they are in their career, to assume they're at least the next one up, if not the one after that, and behave as if that's who they are.
Yeah,
Because
I like that. Yeah,
that puts it out into the universe, and the universe pays you back for that kind of stuff. So yeah, it probably is mumbo jumbo woo stuff, but I do believe in that kind of thing. I've seen it work many times.
I think there might be something
Strange things happen.
Yeah, there might be something psychologically as well, in that it also makes us think it could happen anytime, but with a date,
Yeah,
with a completion date. Oh,
I agree.
need to get on with it. All right, so we've got a 6-month in-person review.
Yep. But by that point, we should have secured. We should be very close to securing our first lot of funding.
What, 5 years?
No. By the 6th month meeting, which you just mentioned, I would hope that we've secured our first lot of funding and are trying to work it. Yeah, and I see, and we're trying to work out who our scriptwriter should be. Trying to secure our scriptwriter.
Yeah,
I don't think. It depends what they're doing. There are just so many stories out there, and scriptwriters, if they're any good, tend to have a massive, fairly long list of stuff that they've got to get through. But you know, the story is strong, and it needs to be told. People, I think we should identify a group of credible scriptwriters and then let them bid for it. So if we get the right group of scriptwriters, all of them should want to be part of it, and one of them will be.
Yes, I'm just thinking about how that would play out, the mechanics of how we do that and how we approach people. But I'm all for approaching it like we have the gold.
We do, really.
Yeah,
we do have the gold. I spend a lot of time with various people trying to make them understand that they are much more powerful than they think they are.
Do you know, this speaks, as the Americans say, this speaks to a very deep sense of identity. And, you know, we tend to settle where our identity lies. And if people aren't comfortable, there are certain people who, for whatever reason, accident of nature or nurture, they end up thinking very highly of themselves, not in a narcissistic way, but just in a deep confidence way. That means that they will be successful because that's where their comfort level is. And other people who won't, you know, a much lower level of general life success. It's all about identity. You can't expect somebody to think 2 levels up if it's not part of their identity, if they're not comfortable with that concept, which is one of the ways in which I coach, to try on an identity, because we all of us, not just me, we all have the capacity to pretend. We all have the capacity to act. It's a really, really effective way to, for instance, go into a room where you might not be very socially confident and be a bit more confident. You don't have to change into that person. You can just pretend for the duration of that party or that meeting. You can go in and you can smile, and underneath you're thinking, oh my God, I haven't got a clue. But nobody else knows that. You can smile,
no.
You can have 5 things ready to say, and so on. All these techniques that enable you for that period of time to believe a different identity. Anyway, don't get me onto that because it's fascinating, and I could be here all day. It's fascinating for me anyway.
I find it fascinating too. Well, you've had your say. I'm going to have mine.
Yes,
and that is that. While I agree with everything you just said in terms of pretending, I think sometimes you just need to jump. You just need to trust the universe and jump. And
your parachute will appear.
And if it doesn't, what's the worst that can happen? More often than not, nothing.
Or it might be egg on face. But yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So that really is my thoughts on that. So we're getting towards the end of this 3-month review. It's
we've waffled as usual. We've been all over the place.
They won't know that because Quinn will cut all the waffle out. He'll do marvelous stuff as usual.
Yeah, I meant all of it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's one of the things I think you want this too, but I'll speak for myself. We're going to make a $50 million movie. That is a very positive statement. We want you, the listener, to be on this journey with us. And it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And if you spend the whole time on the journey just looking at your destination, you're going to get bored pretty quickly. So it's really important that we enjoy the journey and we look around. And that's what I want us to do during these episodes of the podcast. I don't want us necessarily to talk about TJ's War as a book, as an audiobook, or as a movie all the time. There are lots and lots of associated subjects that I'm very happy for us to visit and discuss, because, you know, I love raisins in my fruitcake. I want the variety. Life is here to be enjoyed, and this is very much part of life.
Couldn't agree more. Now, as a final thought, I'm going to just throw something out there, and you, dear listener, can see what you think of this, and we'll pick up on this next time. No, Ian genuinely has no idea what I'm going to say. We can pick up on this in a future episode, but here we go. What do you think about trying to get a skeleton documentary production crew to follow us around while we're doing this? Obviously, that can't happen for the vast majority of it because it's going to take years. But every now and again, for significant events, when we might be meeting somebody important, we might have them there to follow our progress, and they can dip in and out and way to follow our progress.
I think that's a great idea.
That's something to throw out there, something to consider. So it might be another wing, if you like, or another direction, another little branch that, because we've got several branches going at the moment, another branch that we can try and get going.
Very cool.
So lovely chatting with you, Ian. Good review.
And you, young man.
Yeah, we have a clear way forward, mostly.
It is getting clearer. I think the immediate steps are very clear, and I think it's a bit vague beyond that, but it's getting clearer.
Yeah, I think we're on the road in the car. The sun is beginning to come out from behind the clouds, and we are perhaps nearing the service station where we might find a map.
Are the signals getting better for the GPS? Something like that.
Yeah, definitely remembered where the charger is so I can plug my phone in.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com, and to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. To accompany us on our journey, please subscribe to this podcast, because we're going to make a $50 million movie.